Number 5. Alien Gate Crashers. Our first story comes from a man in Zimbabwe who was asleep one night when he woke up to see an alien craft that seemingly had no trouble passing through solid objects. This is his recollection of the event. My name is Johan Reitman, and I farm near Feathersdorp, 150 kilometers from Harare. I am 31 years old. On the 5th of February, I woke up from a bad dream just after midnight, when I heard a car go past. I got up and looked out of the bedroom window, which faces the front of the farm. I watched as 2 cars passed each other, a strange sight, as there are usually few vehicles to be seen, and none at night. One car pulled into my gate, and I thought immediately, oh no, those guys are coming to pinch my new engine on the borehole. I rubbed my eyes and face to make sure I wasn't still asleep. I looked at the car again. It was long and wide, and made a low humming sound. I could see lights at the back, a row of red lights, and a front light which shone high enough to illuminate the treetops. This car or object stopped at my gate for a good 30 seconds and then drove on as if the gate had been opened, and that was it. It was gone. I took my torch, my rifle, 4 farm workers and my dogs, and we went out to the gate. Despite the fact that it had just rained, there were no tire tracks or human tracks on the road. As we approached the gate, I could feel heat coming up from the surface of the road, a really oppressive heat radiating from the ground. Even my ears felt flushed with heat, and my workers and I were soaked with perspiration. It was about 12:30 by then, so when we found nothing further, we all went back home. It was only the following morning that it occurred to me that when we reached the gate, it was closed. This meant that the car had disappeared through a closed gate because they had been watching it when it disappeared, and the gate hadn't moved. The next day, I sent one of the farm workers to fetch some sheep who were lost in the bush, and on his way back, he said he saw an object straddling the road. By the time he reached the spot, it was gone, but strangely enough, the sheep would not walk over to the area where the object had been. Instead, they divided around it. Number 4. A UFO crash in Greece. Our next report comes from Georg and Panteloas, who interviewed the witnesses of a UFO crash in Megas Platanos in Greece. The following is quoted directly from his report. At 0300 hours that night, shepherds and some villagers observed a small group of 5 to 6 UFOs approaching the area from the north. One of them had an unstable flight and seemed to be having a problem. Strange lights came out of the UFO's fuselage, but without any noise. As an eyewitness, Shepherd Trantos Karatranos told me suddenly the treble UFO lost altitude and crashed to the ground at a distance of about 500 meters away from him. He didn't hear any noise, but a fire started burning the bushes. Trantos was very afraid to get closer and stayed in his position watching the phenomenon. The rest of the UFOs in this group stopped over the accident spot, and 2 of them landed near the destroyed UFO. In a few minutes, the fire in the bushes was terminated. For the rest of the night till dawn, there was an unusual traffic from the ground to the flying UFOs. Light spots went up and down, probably collecting the pieces of the destroyed UFO and any bodies of the crew. They finished the collection before sunrise, and after that, the rest of the UFOs took off and were lost in the sky. Meanwhile, all the villagers had been awakened and had seen the whole operation. Early in the morning, the villagers went out to the spot where all of this had occurred, and they saw on the ground a burned oval shape in the ground, with a cut pine tree in the center, and very small metallic pieces, and pieces of wires around the tree. Some of the people, like Aragus Alavantes, collected a number of these pieces. One strange thing was that at the edges of the burned oval, the fire stopped, like it had been cut by a knife. Some hours later, a team of Hellenic Air Force personnel came into the area and told the villagers that this was nothing serious. Maybe a Soviet satellite crashed or a plane. They took some pieces of the UFO too and left the area. Argyris sent a piece of the UFO to the Space Research Institute in Brussels. That's the story. If you think that we need more information, we can get more, because I have a very good relationship with the people in the village of Megas Plantos. You see, they don't like to talk a lot about this story, because they are afraid that someone will think they are crazy or something. Number 3. An unexpected police sighting. The next story on our list was related by a Lithuanian police chief, whose officers witnessed strange UFO activity that resulted in him having to make the press rounds to reassure reassure the people of his country. As he put it, "I am chief of police in Vilnius, Lithuania. Recently, I had to appear on the radio to explain that 2 policemen who had reported seeing something extraordinary were known to me to be reliable witnesses and were of sound and honest mind. There has been considerable public anxiety about this matter, arising from what I consider to be media hysteria about their official report. Earlier this year, the entire police force was put on alert. The 2 officers stated that they had observed a round, shining object on the main route at around midnight, 10 kilometers from the capital city, near the village of Nemedjus. The object was flashing bright light and hovered 20 to 30 meters above the ground. At the same time, you could hear a strange sound, like electricity crackling, they said. The 2 men approached the UFO after watching it for almost half an hour. When they were some 50 meters from it, the object started to move upwards and away from them into the air, then accelerated towards the town. At that point, an alert was put out, and van loads of Rapid Reaction Force police and tracker dogs arrived on the scene, but the UFO had disappeared. We conducted official tests on the area's ground composition, measuring the air's radiation, and took sound recordings. The grass in the area for 10 meters around where the UFO was reported to have been sighted was visibly flattened. Number 2. A Swedish abduction. Our next tale is from a Swedish man who was walking home one night when he suddenly saw a strange light that seemed to instantly transport him to his destination. The following is his story in his own words. Call me Anders. In early March, I left a local election celebration and decided to walk home, about 5 kilometers away. I had a few glasses but was still sober. It was a starry, moonlit night, and I decided to take a shortcut that led over a hill. As I was climbing, a bright light came from behind, which I thought was a fast car. I moved off the road onto the grass verge, and then I realized it was not a car. The light passed right over me, almost touching my head very quick. Then, I found myself immediately outside my home in Lindholmen, ringing the doorbell frantically. When my wife opened the door, she saw that I had a wound in my forehead and my cheek was burnt. The next day, I telephoned the National Defense and was interviewed in detail by 2 investigators. They told me there were other witnesses. A woman cyclist reported seeing a light at the same time I did, and a couple driving nearby saw what they thought was a new water tower with extremely bright lights shining out of its windows. Later, they realized there was no water tower at that spot. I still have a scar on my face to this day. Whenever I touch it, I feel a tingling sensation, and I experience a wonderful feeling of oneness, of unity with the earth itself. Number 1. A strange sighting in Uruguay. Our final tale of the day comes from a police chief in Uruguay who was out with friends when the sights he saw made him a believer. In his own words, "I am Police Chief Miguel Costa, in charge of the force at Melo, Uruguay. On March 10th, I was driving with 2 friends, Armando and Maria Pasa, along a gravel road near Tacuarembó, when a huge oval disc loomed out of the early morning darkness. It was enormous and gleaming, with yellow and orange lights. I stopped the car and purely on impulse flashed the headlights. All of a sudden, the UFO appeared to hesitate and zigzag up and back, as if answering our call. When I started up again, it was following us. I again stopped the car and flashed my lights. Again, the UFO appeared to waver in reply. We drove on once more along the twisting road, and the UFO stayed with us, always about half a kilometer away. This went on for almost 50 kilometers. That's when the strangest thing of all occurred. We were all glued to the windows, watching as the disc suddenly shot towards the ground as if it was going to crash. It stopped 50 to 100 meters from the earth, and we could clearly see its round, dome-like shape with a large flat plate underneath. There was a slight ring of cloud around the dome. The top was reddish, but the bottom was a brilliant glowing white. Inexplicably, the new position of the UFO made us all uneasy, so we turned around and headed back to Tacuarembó, the nearest town. The blazing lights of the UFO remained at a constant distance behind us. I pulled in under some trees, hoping to evade it. We then observed a second disc traveling some distance behind the first. They never touched, but they seemed to be traveling together. They seemed to maneuver up and down until clouds started to form. Then they passed over the top of the clouds and lit them up like a halo. Then they faded, getting smaller and smaller until they disappeared at dawn. They had been with us for 90 minutes. minutes. We were all speechless, as we could not believe what we had witnessed. I myself have never believed in UFOs, but I do know that this incident revealed something rare and inexplicable.
Number 5. The USS Omaha. Coming up first today on our list of unexplained UFO sightings on camera is going to be this wild footage taken off the coast of San Diego from on board the Navy ship USS Omaha. The video footage was shot on an FLIR camera, which is an incredibly expensive, fancy bit of tech. It's a thermal camera to detect heat. It's perfect for this sort of thing, and if you want one for yourself, civilians can buy these cameras. They cost $300,000. That's about 1 month's rent in Toronto. Very fair. In the footage, we can see what looks to be a sphere-like object flying over the ship before entering the water. The Omaha claimed that for days before this incident was recorded, they were seeing drone-like objects flying around their ship that the crew had no knowledge of. This footage was taken from a crew member trying to ascertain what it was that they were dealing with. Now there is some audio on the clip and it's illuminating. When the object goes into the water, we hear the sailors say mark, bearing, and range, meaning that the sailors on the ship were making a note of the coordinates and location where it went in, suggesting that maybe a submarine was sent in to recover or discover whatever was going on in there. Did it even submerge in the water, or does it seem a bit too like the craft outright disappears going into the water? I wish so bad we could get some more angles on this, or a follow-up to be able to find out what this was. Until then, we just have this strange footage to go off of and what speculation we have at home. There's a wild conspiracy theory that I just found out recently and I love, and we'll mention it a few times in this video, about a secret UFO construction facility under the water. Maybe this drone was heading on home. Who knows? Number 4. Our next clip comes to us from the UFO subreddit, and it was posted by user The Firo, saying, "This video was taken by a good friend of mine on a flight to El Paso, and as soon as it gets noticed, it's gone." In the video, we can see we're in the passenger seat of a jet, high above the ground, and flying around the windows is an unexplained object zipping around at high speeds. Saucer-like object, looking a bit like maybe it was a frisbee that got tossed into the air by Godzilla. Now, it does definitely look like a classic flying saucer, like what you imagine a UFO to be, but not as many people were convinced. More than a few people in the comments section for this one were a little skeptical of this high-flying footage. Several commenters suggested that this flying saucer is actually little more than a reflection of something from inside the plane's cabin, suggesting that if you pause enough and look right in the video, you can see the object's reflection being repeated in the window pane. Now, there are just as many people suggesting that it is a solid object existing outside the plane. The trouble is, we've been given very limited footage and it's hard to tell, and there was no follow-up by the original poster to provide any more details, so we only have this little excerpt that we've been given. Whenever there's a scenario like this, I do like to leave it up to you, my faithful YouTube comment audience. What do you think? Is this a flying saucer soaring above the clouds, or just a reflection of some light? I could honestly go either way with this one. I will say it could easily be explainable as a reflection, but I also feel like the object has a certain weight to it. I don't know, I'm directly in the middle for this one. I'm a centrist on this video. It should have been the number 3 point, but it wasn't. Anyway, jury's out. Please let me know what you think of this. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3, New Delhi. Coming up next is going to be this clip shared online with the caption, "A weird set of lights above New Delhi." Take a look-see. So in the clip, pretty clearly we can see, yeah, there's some strange lights going on in the night sky above New Delhi. There's a scattering of lights above the city's horizon. Now, immediately your first thought might be that it's drones, which is a reasonable assumption when it comes to UFO stuff. I feel like several videos that come out of little glowing lights dashing across the night sky usually end up being civilian drones. However, the original poster clarified that drones are illegal in India and aren't widespread at all for civilians. And on top of that, the area that's being filmed is said to be in the slums, where it's incredibly unlikely that anyone would have access to drones. The poster added this little bit of context with the video. "I saw this today around 8 p.m. in New Delhi with a friend. It was massive. This cannot be a building, as there is no tall building in that direction, only slums with heights of about 4 to 5 floors, yet this building looked as tall as the Burj Khalifa. There was a moderate wind going on, and I thought, if it's drones, why aren't they swaying? Not to forget, drones are illegal in India and especially in New Delhi. It looked massive in the sky. I wish the camera saw what my eyes could see. It could absolutely blew me away. I've been to drone shows, but this looked nothing like it. Any idea what this could be? Also, I agree. I wish our cameras did just capture exactly what our eyes saw. It would make all this UFO stuff so much easier, and also I would finally get a nice picture of the moon to have on my phone. Now, some people in the comment section on this clip suggested that maybe it was a laser light show, but that's just speculation and nothing concrete. Well, one particularly good suggestion from a commenter that did make me laugh said that the original poster should have ran towards the lights to see what happens and investigate up close and personal, you know? Worst case, yeah, you get abducted, never see your friends, family, or home planet again, but you also would get the ride of a lifetime, and if you do survive to come back home, you get an amazing story to tell people. So live a little. Number 2, Garden Ridge. Our next offering for your entertainment, and I hope your amusement, is this short clip that was uploaded to YouTube pretty recently. UFO spotted over Garden Ridge, Texas. In this clip, we can see a somewhat strange flying object that looks a bit like a cocoon being propelled forward, or maybe even a beehive or something. The entity has no propulsion or trails behind it, which really doesn't explain how it's moving forward so fast. Some sort of anti-gravity manipulation technology that I don't understand. Is that too wild to speculate that an alien has that? Now, we've seen cocoon-like UFOs a few times doing these videos, actually. We saw them a bunch. I don't know if you remember, one of them turned out to be Mr. Peanut, but most of them are UFOs. I'd say after triangle UFOs or little light clusters, I probably see videos of little cocoon-like UFOs like this more than any other kind. So what are these cocoon-like UFOs that keep appearing, and why do they all look so similar? This lack of propulsion too is really puzzling me. Now, the original poster returned after the fact to add a little bit of clarity in the comments. He said the object was moving with the wind, not against it, so maybe it's possible it's something like a weather balloon that has been swept up in an air current. That's usually what most of these clips turn out to be. I would love to see a statistic on how many UFO sightings are actually weather balloons, because I suspect it's probably like 99%. Another commenter suggested that this could be an object heading towards Randolph Air Force Base, speculating that the UAP seen in this video could be a manned jetpack or a very tiny stealth craft of some kind, which would be pretty cool, or even some sort of new drone technology the US military is developing. Now, among other things though, the original uploader did admit and suggest that this really could just be a balloon, suggested that he thought it might be attached to a floral arrangement that somebody let go of. Hey, maybe an alien was picking up a last-minute Valentine's Day gift, or hey, maybe an alien had to apologize to someone, you know? Maybe a probing went wrong and a little flowers was the only thing that could smooth it over. I wonder if they'll keep that in the video. Number 1, the A-10 over Arizona. And coming up at our final spot today for crazy UFO footage is going to be this dramatic footage of a spherical UAP being filmed tailing an A-10 aircraft over Arizona. The footage was filmed by a mobile scope truck recorded by the DHS, that's the Department of Homeland Security. The craft caught on camera is one of unknown origins, well, obviously. So why it's a UFO. The U doesn't stand for usual, it's unidentified. Now, there's really not a lot to go on from this clip, as the original uploader didn't provide a ton of insight or backstory beyond the short clip, so we're left with mostly speculation. Similar to the previous clip, I have to wonder maybe if this is a drone of some kind due to its size in comparison to the rest of the craft, which dwarfs it. Could this be an unmanned craft? Is someone piloting it from a remote location far away? Now, earlier in the video, I quickly shouted out a conspiracy which I recently discovered, and I hope we can do like a full video on it because it was fascinating, saying that a a majority of the crafts that we see in UFO videos are scout crafts that come from a construction facility hidden somewhere deep beneath the ocean from a civilization that predates ours. This advanced technological facility is manned by an artificial intelligence that keeps it running autonomously and produces these small crafts naturally to scout out the planet and, well, I don't know yet what they're doing, but something alien. Now obviously that is a very tinfoil hat theory. I got it from a less than reputable website, but it is a ton of fun to speculate on and would certainly make sense why there are so many sightings of these similar objects if they were all literally coming from the same factory line. And also, wouldn't that just be the nicest, I don't know, funniest little ironic cap to aliens if we're spending all our time looking up but they've been below us the whole time? Anyway, something to think about. Number 5, El Cajon, California. Our first clip today comes from the beautiful Californian city of El Cajon. Let's take a look at something strange that was spotted in the sky that's got the locals talking. This clip was captured and posted to Reddit by user Exporius. Oh, Exporius, that's fun to say. Say that at home if you haven't yet. Let's take a look at the clip first. Pretty interesting stuff, huh? Definitely something that makes you want to take another glimpse. When it was posted to Reddit, Exporius sounded off in the comments and offered a little bit of context as to what was going on. Here it is. 3 black spheres appeared overhead my apartment complex in the afternoon in El Cajon, California. The objects were unlike balloons, rotating around each other and seemingly unaffected by the wind. My partner, who you can hear talking in the background about UFOs, agrees that the shapes were moving in an odd formation relative to the wind. They were also flickering in the sky, disappearing in and out of visibility, not at all like the metallic reflection of a Mylar balloon. The objects disappeared shortly after my girlfriend made me stop filming to go inside. Suddenly, the spheres whipped around about 90 degrees and vanished. Oh, his girlfriend made him stop filming to go inside. Imagine we had the perfect evidence of UFOs, but somebody had to stop filming because they had to go unload the dishwasher. Anyway, Exporius finishes off by saying, "Very strange. I have no idea what these are." And neither do we. This clip garnered a lot of attention in the subreddit where it was posted, getting people chatting about what it could possibly be, although with anything like this there were a fair share of skeptics. Some dismissed the sighting as being nothing more than a flock of birds moving in on a particularly strange triangular fashion, while others suspected it could have been drone. What is a bird if not a feathery drone? So what do we think, my fair viewers? Something worth writing a UAP report on, or was this something a real bird brain posted? You let me know down below, okay? Number 4, from a pilot. Our next clip was posted by the History Channel, of all places. I guess technically if a UFO did appear to us, that would be like a pretty big part of history, right? Still, it's funny to me that that's where I'm getting my UFO clips these days. This clip isn't some blurry footage shot from somebody staring right up at the sun. Instead, we have a front row seat from a B-320 pilot's cockpit as a pilot over a commercial flight in Colombia saw something truly bizarre that they couldn't explain. Why don't you take a look at this cuboid UAP that looks out of this world. Let's roll the clip. A metallic looking object that's got a bizarre shape, almost looking like somebody's rolling a giant D20 through the sky, comes hurtling into frame. When you slow it down, it does look a lot like a flying cube, so if you were worried about the Borg coming to assimilate us, this might just be that proof confirming that. Now, in the excerpt from the History Channel clip, they theorized that what this could be a probe or a drone of some type for an alien civilization sending out a first wave of scouts before the rest of the party gets here, and this strange object could be one of those drones, try to sneak on by but being caught on camera. Now, not everyone is as convinced as our friends at the History Channel. More than a few viewers have thought that what that could have been caught in the sky here is nothing more than a balloon, and some strange angles are making it look a lot more alien and cuboid than it really is. So what do we think? Scouts from another civilization coming in to suss out the situation? Or is this clip posted by people who are just full of hot air? I'm getting punny today. Number 3, Arizona. Our next sighting comes to us again from our favorite friend for strange clips of flying objects. You know it and I know it, it's the UFO subreddit. Seeing as how we're on part 7, I think I owe the moderators and users of the UFO subreddit a top 5 Congressional Medal of Honor. There you go. Anyway, this next clip, posted by user Giancarlo the Great, showcases a UAP caught on camera in Phoenix, Arizona that's got everybody sounding off. Let's roll the clip and see if you can stay silent watching this. Now, it's hard not to see what the original poster was talking about because I'm pretty sure you saw the flashing lights floating eerily in the sky like a beacon. What's kind of funny is that the same day, from the same location, Phoenix, Arizona, another user on Reddit unintentionally recorded another angle of the exact same sighting, or at the very least the same object on a similar trajectory. And in that clip, we can see it pulsating a bit. It looks a little more circular from here. In fact, several commenters across both of these videos commented that they all saw this in Phoenix. So it's possible that this sighting is bigger than we think, or that there's just not much going on in Phoenix, Arizona. No offense, I've never been, I'm sure it's lovely. I'm not sure which is more likely or which scares me more. Now, I've got to admit, this one's got me raising my eyebrows just a little bit because I can't quite figure it out just yet. Some users on Reddit suggested that they thought what this could be is something being dragged in the sky, with some users suggesting that it looked like something was tethered and this could be a custom drone or a nighttime kite, which, side note, was not something I knew anyone did, but I've since learned is kind of a hobby. I'm now wondering how many years of UFO footage has all just been kites with like LED straps attached to the back of them, because I'm starting to suspect it was most of them. So what do we think? Aliens? Kites? Either is possible, really. Number 2, Metapod. Our next clip comes to us from Instagram with the pretty funny caption, "Metapod strikes again." You'll see what I mean in a moment. But I will say, this is basic stuff. Everybody knows Metapod can only use hardened. 0 out of 10. Go back. Do a lap. Now, we've featured clips from this particular UAP or style of UAP before on this channel, maybe the brand or whoever manufactures these crafts, so it's fitting that the caption is "Metapod strikes again." Well, this particular thing baffled me the last time I talked about it, and it's baffling us again all the way here, so here it is one more time. Let's roll that clip for you. Now, a quick aside for my viewership who aren't big gamers out there, Metapod is a Pokemon that's shaped like a cocoon, and I can definitely see where this Metapod comparison comes from. That's definitely what this creature looks like some sort of strange cocoon. It seems organic to me in a very weird way, you know? As if unlike a lot of other UAP sightings, this thing is something that's actually alive on its own. It almost looks like it moves a little, you know? Like it wiggles just a little bit, like it's got a little jiggle to it. Are you following me with this? I also feel like it looks a bit like a floating beehive. Maybe this thing is kind of like a Rorschach test. You see what you want to see. Now, the fact that this thing keeps popping up with different sightings definitely has me very curious as to what it could possibly be. Also, if there's any Rick and Morty fans out there, I swear this thing has like the exact same silhouette as the giant head that appears in the Get Swifty episode that asks humanity to show it what it's got. Maybe that's why this thing keeps coming back. We haven't shown it what we've got yet, and nobody has performed Get Swifty for it. So maybe get on that, and maybe we can appease this thing. Number 1, Sean Cahill. Our final clip for us today comes to us from Sean Cahill, a UAP enthusiast and a former Navy serviceman who is a veteran of 20 years, who in his retirement has become a decently big name in the UFO community as we set out there to look for the truth. Why don't you take a look at this clip he posted on Twitter and see if you can spot the UAP hovering up above. They'll circle it in red too, don't worry. Now we get a beautiful look at a mountain range, looks like a Windows XP background, and something very strange floating slowly moving across the horizon. Something flat looking like a disc, looking like a real classic flying saucer looking thing straight out of the movies. Now, at first glance, it's definitely got my attention because it's not often you get UAP clips that are this broad in daylight and this clear in view. I'm used to somebody shaking it around like they put their phone in the drying machine. Now, as always with stuff like this, I like to call attention to the more skeptical side of things because I think that gives us an air of credibility. More than a few people on Reddit suggested that this really could be something as uninteresting as just a plane moving slowly through the horizon, and looking at something like a short takeoff and landing private plane, it definitely seems like it would be very easy to make that mistake, but I personally want to believe that a 20-year Navy vet would know what a civilian plane would look like. So as always, my ghouls and goblins, I'm tossing this one over to you. My gang, in the comments, what do we think? Could this be an alien presence caught on camera, or is this just a plain hoax? Plain, like plain, that's a little pun for you. That one's just for the scholars. You're gonna get that on the car ride home.
Starting off this list in our number 5 spot, we have Project Grudge Report 13. Okay, so I've read quite a few different UFO sighting stories and stories of alleged alien abductions, and this is fully one of the most terrifying that I have ever heard of. So basically the story starts off in March of 1956 when Air Force Sergeant Jonathan P. Lovett was assisting Major William Cunningham in the White Sands Missile Testing Grounds near Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. The pair were out searching for debris from a recent rocket test when Major Cunningham heard a loud scream. His first thought was that Sergeant Lovett had been bitten by a snake, so he went around to help aid his partner when he allegedly saw something he never expected. He recounted seeing the sergeant being dragged away by some sort of long serpentine arm that had wrapped around his legs. Whatever this creature was, it was connected to a hovering silver disc that was in the air about 15 feet away. The major stood there in horror as he watched this creature and the sergeant retreat into the craft, which then rose vertically into the sky. Of course, he radioed for help, and while he was taken to the hospital for observation, search teams were sent out immediately. It wouldn't happen until 3 days later that they would find the body of Sergeant Lovett, only 10 miles from the site where he was said to have disappeared from. The autopsy performed on him later also only raised more questions than answers, as his body was severely harmed. So of course there was an investigation that happened, and many people claim this investigation was detailed in a 600-page document labeled Project Grudge Report 13. But the problem with this is that no official information on Report 13 exists, and the US government denies its very existence. Though Grudge Reports 1 through 12 have been declassified, along with Report 14, no official mention or accounting of Report 13 exists, and the story solely relies on secondhand accounts of the horrible incident. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Cigar Shaped UFO. Okay, so let's set the stage. It's 2:45 a.m. on July 24th, 1948, and there are 20 passengers aboard a twin-engine propeller plane that is at 5,000 feet, being flown from Houston to Atlanta by pilot Clarence S. Childs and co-pilot John B. Whitted. Out of the 20 passengers on board, 19 of them are asleep at these early morning hours, and everything seems to be going as per usual until it wasn't. The 2 pilots and the 1 passenger who was awake all witnessed the same thing about 20 miles southeast of Montgomery, Alabama. About a week after the incident, the pilot explained what he had seen by saying, quote, "It was clear there were no wings present, that it was powered by some jet or other type of power shooting flame from the rear some 50 feet. There were 2 rows of windows which indicated an upper and a lower deck, and from inside these windows a very bright light was glowing. Underneath the ship there was a blue glow of light. By his estimates, he watched the UFO for about 10 seconds before it completely vanished." The co-pilot gave a similar explanation and also added, quote, "The object was cigar-shaped and seemed to be about 100 feet in length. The fuselage appeared to be about 3 times the circumference of a B-29 fuselage. It had 2 rows of windows, an upper and a lower. The windows were very large and seemed square. They were white with light, which seemed to be caused by some type of combustion. I asked Captain Childs what we had just seen, and he said that he didn't know." Well, this is obviously all very strange and peculiar. What has driven UFO enthusiasts even more is the fact that this strange sighting was of course later investigated by the US government, but the results of that investigation have allegedly been mostly destroyed. Does that mean that they found something they aren't willing to share yet? Some believe that perhaps the pilots and the passenger witnessed a secret Soviet spy craft, while others believe it was definitely something of the extraterrestrial variety. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Lubbock incident. On August 25th, 1951 in Lubbock, Texas, a group of scientists from the Texas Technical College were all hanging out in the backyard of geology professor Dr. W.I. Robinson. They were all just chilling, enjoying each other's company, until around 9:20 p.m. when they saw something very strange. It was a V-shaped formation of 15 to 30 bluish-green lights passing overhead. They were completely confused over what it could be, but figured that the lights would likely reappear, which they did. About an hour later, the lights reappeared, and at this point, all of these scientists knew that they had witnessed something exceptionally interesting, but what was it? The scientists weren't the only ones to witness the lights either. About 350 miles away in Albuquerque, New Mexico, an employee of the Atomic Energy Commission's top secret Sandia Corporation, who had a high-level Q security clearance, had been sitting outside with his wife, quote, gazing at the night sky, commenting on how beautiful it was, when both of them were startled at the sight of a huge airplane flying swiftly and silently over their home. On the aft edge of the wings, there were 6 to 8 pairs of soft, glowing bluish lights. There were more sightings as well, all reporting a similar thing. The group of scientists began investigating, tracking the lights, which they witnessed 12 more times. They measured the angle of the lights, they tracked the speed, and they attempted, unsuccessfully, to try and measure the UFO's altitude. Here's the deal with this though. The government did end up investigating, but the official explanation for these lights is the most cryptic message I've ever seen. It read, quote, I thought that the professor's lights might have been some kind of birds reflecting the light from mercury vapor streetlights, but I was wrong. They weren't birds. They weren't refracted light, but they weren't spaceships. The lights that the professor saw have been positively identified as a very commonplace and easily explainable natural phenomena. I can't divulge exactly the way the answer was found because it is an interesting story of how a scientist set up complete instrumentation to track down the lights. Telling the story would lead to his identity, and in exchange for his story, I promised the man complete anonymity. Despite people claiming that the mystery has been solved, by this explanation, people are left with a lot more questions than answers. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Shag Harbor incident. This UFO encounter is often referred to as Canada's Roswell, so I was shocked that I hadn't heard of it before. Basically, this incident took place on October 4th, 1967, when an unknown object crashed into the water near Shag Harbor, which is a tiny town in Nova Scotia. There were at least 11 people who witnessed this object as it crashed, and many people claimed to have heard a whistling sound followed by a loud bang when the crash took place. The witnesses that claimed to have seen the UFO were all doing a bunch of different things at the time. One couple was just sitting on their porch, but the 2 witnesses that really get me are a flight pilot and a ship captain. On Air Canada Flight 305, First Officer Robert Ralph pointed out to Captain Pierre Charbonneau that there was something strange at the left side of the aircraft. They reported an object tracking along on a parallel course a few miles away and described it as a brilliantly lit rectangular object with a string of smaller lights trailing the object. Shortly after they first noticed it, there was a large but silent explosion near the unknown object, and then 2 minutes later there was a second explosion, but this one faded to a blue cloud. As for the ship captain, Captain Leo Howard Mercy, he saw 4 blips on his Decca radar that were totally stationary. This led to him looking up to the sky, and that is when he saw 4 bright objects sitting in a rectangular formation about 28 kilometers from the vessel's window. He wasn't the only one who saw it on board. The entire crew of nearly 20 fishermen stood on deck and watched. A man named Laurie Wickens was another one of the witnesses, and he and some of his friends ended up calling the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, because they saw a huge object floating in the Atlantic Ocean about 1,000 feet off of the shore. This is all super weird, and not only the RCMP, but also the Royal Canadian Navy and the Royal Canadian Air Force became involved in investigation, but nothing was ever recovered or found. But it was also revealed that all commercial, private, and military aircrafts along the eastern seaboard were accounted for, so what could have all these witnesses seen? Since they have never officially identified what it was in the official Government of Canada documents, it is listed as a UFO. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Westall incident. Taking it back to 1966, we have the largest mass UFO sighting in Australia that at the time was largely ignored. This incident took place when over 300 students and staff members of a school in Melbourne all witnessed multiple UFOs silently flying through the air before they landed in a nearby field. Well, there's been a ton of speculation about this incident in the many years it's been. One witness account stands out among the rest, and that is the account made by the science teacher from the school, Andrew Greenwood. He was alerted to the UFO event by a hysterical student, and when he went outside to see for himself, everything changed. Previously a skeptic of UFO stories, Andrew's mind was abruptly changed when he saw, as he described it, a round silver object about the size of a car with a metal rod sticking up in the air. He went on to explain that suddenly 5 planes came and surrounded the object, all while more people were gathering to watch. He called what happened next the most amazing flying flying he has ever seen, explaining that, quote, every time they got too close to the object it would slowly accelerate, then rapidly accelerate, and then move away from them and stop. Then they would take off after it again, and the same thing would happen. This went on for about 20 minutes before the mysterious object just vanished. As weird as this all was, what was almost weirder was what happened next. Firstly, the headmaster of the school is said to have tried to put a stop to anyone talking about the incident at all, threatening severe punishment to any student or staff who was caught speaking about it, and when the Royal Australian Air Force contacted him, he refused to talk to them at all about it. There have also been stories of witnesses getting visits from people warning them not to speak of the incident. Andrew explained, quote, when he asked the physical education teacher to describe what she had seen herself so that he could compare it with his own observation, she just wouldn't say anything. Another witness who did talk to Andrew and described what she had seen in great detail, just 30 minutes later refused to speak to him and wouldn't say a word. Was this because of the threats from the headmaster, or was something else going on here? This is definitely one strange UFO story that leaves behind a lot of questions.
Number 5. Japan sighting. Our first sighting comes to us from Japan, where a man looked out his window one day in time to see an amazing sight, only for it to disappear before he could get his family to look at it. The following is his story as he related it. My name is Tatsumi Tanaka. I am 42 years old and the owner of a beauty parlor in Inaka City, Gunma Prefecture. Last Sunday, I saw a UFO, and it was the first time such a shocking matter happened to me. I never believed that I would have such an experience, but surprisingly, it happened to me. I was on the second floor of my house and casually looking out the east window when I caught sight of a white object, rather big, the shape impossible to describe, rising softly and perpendicularly from the surface of the ground. We see Mount Akagi in the northeast direction, and it was in this direction that the UFO rose, but I could not tell how far away it was. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning. I wondered what it was. I thought at first sight it must be an airship or a balloon. I strained my eyes to see better, but could not understand what it was. After rising straight up, it stayed for a while at a constant height and seemed to become blurred outside. It then turned into the oval shape that is familiar to us from TV or magazines. It was the same object, but not the same shape as before, but the outline was not clear. Soon after, it moved to the right at fast speed. It looked like a low-altitude flight, but it all happened so quickly, and then it just disappeared into the cloudless blue sky. I was so shocked, I fell out of my mind. This thing was so huge, but it disappeared just in a moment. I tried to explain what I saw to my wife and child who were right beside me, but I couldn't. I just pointed and could only shout out in surprise. My wife was very annoyed and said that everyone cannot see UFOs, only some people do and some don't. By then it had disappeared. I was so excited that I went outside with my daughter and searched the sky. But it was too late. I still can't believe I have had such an experience. I will never forget that movement and that speed. Something beyond common sense. It means to me that things exist that we don't understand. Number 4. New Zealand. Next, we have a story from New Zealand where a woman was enjoying a nice day in her yard when she saw a craft unlike anything she'd seen before. This is her story in her own words. My name is Edith Perkins. At 8:30 p.m. Monday, I was doing some chores in our backyard. This is in Bexley, just north of Christchurch, South Island, New Zealand. I saw something in the sky, like a capsule or cigar-shaped object. At first, it had a silver whitish body with a darker gray forked tail. While I looked at it, it was just overhead, seeming to be coming closer. I was facing west. The rounded edges, front and back of the object, called my attention to it initially. Its size appeared to be 10 centimeters long if held at arm's length. I suppose it was about 30,000 feet high, but it seemed very puzzling that there was no jet trail behind it. So, I went indoors to fetch a pair of 7x35 binoculars. My husband joined me and our home care nurse. As we three watched, a very bright light completely covered the object. It did not happen as a flash of light. It seemed to start up and then finish with a burst of light. I was seeing a different rear design on the craft with a forked end to it, and the color was now dark gray. Another burst of light occurred, and the object presented a rim all around the craft, with either intermittent colored lights on the rim, or else the rim was composed of rotating colored lights. These were in tones of reddish orange. This object then flew out over Pegasus Bay towards the northeast. Number 3. Papua New Guinea. Our story from Papua New Guinea involves a young man whose entire community was brought to a chilled hush when a strange craft came to town for a closer look at humanity. As he put it, "My name is Alex James. I live in Pilla Pilla Community, New Guinea. About 7 p.m. last Tuesday, I went with 4 friends to Pilla Pilla Community School for rugby practice. We were going back to our village after dark when we saw some bright lights approaching. There were a lot of people about, some coming back from bathing and others sitting around eating their dinners. When they saw the light, they all ran inside and locked their doors, except for a few of us who just stood and stared. As the UFO approached us, we heard no sound. The streetlights all dimmed just like a torch when the batteries are failing. It hovered over the coconut palms and looked huge. It was oblong in shape. It passed slowly overhead. My friends and I were almost frozen as we watched it. We felt as though we could not move or speak, because we were so shocked by the sight. The bottom of the UFO was oblong shaped, with very bright lights all around the edges. At the top was a pyramid-like shape, with lights around it also. Just bright white. No colors. It was huge and took over 30 minutes to pass by. We checked the time. When it was hovering over us, it seemed to be as bright as day. The whole place was lit up like bright daylight. That's how bright its lights were. Then the object just disappeared in the direction of the mountains near Vuvu. Number 2. Zimbabwe sighting. Our next tale comes to us from a journalist named Cynthia Hind, who interviewed a teenager named Lloyd, who witnessed not only a strange craft, but alien life forms when he was awoken late one night. The following is quoted directly from her report. At between 1 and 1:30, he woke up, and because he knew it would be quiet at that hour, he decided to do some studying for his exams. Whilst thus engaged, he heard a clicking sound. It continued for some minutes, so Lloyd decided to check what it could be. He opened the front door and looked outside. He could hear the sound coming from up the road, and when he glanced in that direction, he witnessed something very strange. He quickly went outside and hid behind a hedge to get a better view. He was able to observe a small figure about 1 meter high, with a head like a rugby ball, dressed in white overalls. On its back, the creature had a small satchel, attached to which was an aerial with a flashing red light. Lloyd was terrified. He told me he was asphyxiated with fear and ran back into the house, jumped into bed, and covered himself with his blankets. He slept fitfully for the rest of the night. At 6 the next morning, he went to look where the creature had walked and found several footprints which he could not identify and which he attributed to the creature. When he arrived at school, he told his friends about seeing a ghost in the night, but one of his friends suggested that it was a UFO. Lloyd is now under the impression that the creature is called a UFO. Number 1. Australia sighting. Our final tale of the day comes from a man by the name of Patrick Knowles. He was on a road trip with his family when they discovered a close encounter more terrifying than he could have possibly imagined. In his own words, it happened on January 20th. My mother, 2 brothers, and I were driving from Perth to Melbourne. We were going to drive straight through in shifts, and we planned to cross the desert at night when the heat wasn't so bad. By 2:30 a.m., we were in the Nullarbor Plain. We stopped for petrol and switched drivers. Sean was driving, and I was in the front seat next to him. The road was empty. Suddenly, we saw a bright yellow light up ahead, and Sean slowed down. As we got closer, the yellow light seemed to be emanating from an egg-shaped object hovering just above ground level. We thought we might be seeing things, but then a caravan passed, going the other way, and it swerved sharply to avoid the luminous egg. The closer we got to it, the more we realized it wasn't a normal vehicle, or a road signal, or anything like that. Sean swerved to avoid it, and we continued on, leaving it behind. Suddenly, the object started towards us. It appeared to accelerate with tremendous speed. We drove on, and it literally chased us. The faster we went to get away from it, the faster this object went after us. I reckon we reached a speed of 125 miles per hour, but it caught up in a matter of seconds. Then Sean made a sudden U-turn and headed back west in the direction of the petrol station. The UFO also turned around. I don't know how the hell it was flying, because it didn't have any wings or anything like wings. It just kept coming after us. Sean made another fast U-turn, heading back towards Melbourne again, but the UFO turned as well and kept pace with the car. In the back seat, everyone was scared. The dogs started barking and whining. Then, suddenly, we were hit. It shot a beam of light out and punctured our back tire. The back tire was on fire. We started sliding across the road. I realized if we braked, we would have to confront the UFO, but Sean didn't have any choice. Then it landed on the roof of the car and picked the car up. It lit up the car like a microwave. The heat was intense. Our hair was standing straight up and we felt really funny, like we were being dehydrated. It was awful, frightening, like our brains were being sucked out. My fear was that I would be pulled out of my body. I put my hand out of the window and touched something spongy that burned my hand. I thought we were going to die. You could actually feel the car rising in the air. The car began to fill with a thick black fog. It was so hot, and all this soot, this junk started covering us. Our voices started changing. You know how a tape deck sounds when the batteries start to go flat. That's what it was like. Then I passed out. I came to when I heard a tremendous noise like a bang, and our car suddenly dropped back to Earth. Dawn was coming up. The thing just flew away, and that was the last we saw of it. I had to change the tire, and we tried to clean out the black soot. There were marks on the roof of the car. As soon as we could, we drove fast to the nearest roadhouse. We were too shocked to talk for a while. Then we realized we had lost a couple hours' time during the incident. We called the police. The funny thing was, they were already looking for us. Someone, maybe the people in the caravan we passed, had phoned the police anonymously. Their report states that they witnessed our car being picked up off the road and shaken violently. They noticed the car was covered in black ash. The police inspected our car and noted the ash, the bad smell, and the dents on the roof. They were convinced something had occurred. They took us to the hospital, where we were treated for burns and shock.
Number 5. Something falling over Montana. It seems a week's worth of sightings of strange crafts flying over the US and Canada just wasn't enough to fill anyone's appetite for UFO content. There's always something strange afoot or something strange falling from the sky. Just this week over Billings, Montana, residents have been concerned after something mysterious fell from the sky. Footage captured recently shows trails of orange smoke, thick, falling from the sky. Residents have been left in the dark without much official answer as to what had happened, and if this object was connected to these other objects that have been shot down at all. Luckily, through the internet, we're able to take a look at Billings residents' thoughts and concerns through it. On a Reddit thread dedicated to the sighting, multiple users recorded some strange going-ons around the city. Multiple posters reported that there was an increased military presence, with loads of reports of seeing military aircraft flying around overhead for days prior and after. Residents of Billings on a Facebook group asking questions about it noted an increase of unmarked black SUVs around the area as well. Could this be a little cover-up? Do we have a development of a modern-day Roswell on our hands? It's definitely a bit odd amidst all that's currently going on with strange UFO sightings. We haven't really heard so much as a word about this on mainstream news stations, or maybe they think we've all just had enough of UFO coverage. Well, not us, not Top 5 Scary. Personally, I'll be watching this with great interest. So I'll pass this one on to you guys though. What do we think exactly is going on here? Any Montana natives who might be able to help us out just a little bit? Because it strikes me as extremely odd. What do we think here? Alien craft? Recovered drone? Military testing? Glitch in the Matrix? Mothman? All of these are seeming equally likely right now. And if you just cannot get enough UFO footage, hey, don't worry, neither can we. We've got videos on UFOs, aliens, NASA conspiracies and cover-ups, and tons of true stories absolutely out of this world. Not your scene? No problem. We got loads on the channel and something scary for the whole family. So take a look, subscribe, and stay scared. But stay watching this video because I got more UFOs for you. Number 4, the floating beehive. Now our next clip's origins is a little bit disputed, and it's a bit of a mystery as to when and where exactly it was sighted. But what most people can agree on is just how bizarre this footage is. So why don't you take a look with me. This object has been alleged to have been spotted over Denver, but it's also been alleged to have been seen over Spain. Entirely possible it's been over both. This footage has been stabilized and cleaned up as much as possible to try and provide a clear look at whatever is floating around up there, and well, I have no idea whatsoever. It kind of looks like a floating beehive that almost seems like it's got a combustion inside of it. It looks like something is erupting in a flame. And maybe it's just me and my own tired eyes, but it almost looks like whatever this thing is twisting shape and contorting midair in a way that almost makes it seem organic. Now, what I like about this clip is how different whatever this thing is looks like compared to most UFO, UAP footage I've seen out there. More than a few commenters pointed out that they think it looks like a stone face, with a bunch referencing that one episode of Rick and Morty with all the giant alien heads that come to Earth and they do the Get Swifty song. It's a good one, to be fair. Definitely a fair comparison. Unfortunately, even with stabilization and enhancement and cleaning up the video, it's still extremely difficult to ascertain just what exactly it is we're dealing with here. Doesn't seem human in origin, and it definitely seems like it's something that could have been out of this world. So if anyone's got any insight onto this thing, please point us towards it. Number 3, the floating cigar. I got another bit of stabilized footage of something strange in the air from Reddit for you. Check out our next clip. And may I say a big thank you to the folks out there who are stabilizing their UFO footage. That is leaps and bounds ahead of what we've been doing with UFO stuff for years. No wonder we're making such strides in recent years. This clip was posted to Reddit from a user whose account has now been deleted. Deleted by choice or silenced? Maybe clear your browser history after watching this video, just to be safe. Hey, you should probably do that anyway. I'm not judging you, but you know, make sure. Anyway, let's get to the clip. Take a look. This is definitely one of the more bizarre UFO clips I've seen in a minute, and I spend literally all day in an office watching bizarre UFO clips, so I think that ought to count for something. When you think of a UFO, you kind of think of a flying saucer, cute little dome up top. Or maybe you think of like a cool sci-fi looking fighter jet, but I think very seldom do you think of a floating cylinder going through the air like this, sort of hovering in one spot menacingly. It looks like it's radiating lights, either with a seriously reflective surface, or it's producing them itself and kind of just vibing up there in the clouds. Worth noting is that across several reports of unexplained phenomena and mysterious crafts reported by Air Force and Navy pilots, one of the more repeated ones was strange cylindrical craft, and a comparison very frequently was made of a floating cigar. And whatever this is certainly does look like a floating cigar, enough to give me a bit of pause, but I also read hundreds upon hundreds of alien stories and watch UFO videos all day, so I'm more of a tinfoil hat conspiracist than the average duck. You know what this kind of reminds me of though? Is that little gadget in Men in Black that they use to erase everybody's mind when they see something they're not supposed to. Looks a ton like that to me. Maybe that was the point of this thing. A mass amnesiac designed to quickly flash over the population and erase any recent memories of UFO and UAP spottings. That or it's just like a weird weather balloon. That's what it ends up being like 99.9% of the time. Number 2, floating triangle. Now our next clip is another one shared to Reddit, and hey, while I'm here, shout out to the UFO subreddit for making finding clips of alien crafts just so much easier than it was a few years ago. You gotta love the information age. Now, keep your eyes peeled for this next one coming up, because it is a serious doozy. I had to do a little bit of digging for this clip, put on my newsman fedora, try and get down to business, but from what I could turn up, this footage was captured somewhere soaring over Guatemala City. In the video, we can see what is a pretty clear triangle shape flying through the air with blinding bright lights casting down onto the surface. This clip to me has that feel of UFO footage, you know, the vibe. It looks a bit like something that could have come out of a movie, which does almost make me feel like maybe it's too good to be true. Of course, there's also the possibility that whatever I'm looking at right now is just a very advanced spy plane seen from down below and giving off a very unique silhouette. Like the cigar clip before it, black triangle UFOs are one of the more commonly reported descriptions of UFOs. In fact, even on the comments of this clip are several commenters stating that they've all seen similar things. Now, obviously, take that with a grain of salt, of course, because they're YouTube comments. No offense to my beloved YouTube commenters, you know I love you. But it does help paint the picture that whatever is happening has happened more than once. Now, my theory for this clip is I think this most likely is something military and advanced, and if I wanted to kind of get out there with my theorizing, which I do, it could potentially be something reverse engineered from recovered technology. Luis Elizondo, who I mention in these videos all the time, is a former US intelligence agent and a notable figure in the world of UFO discussions. And he's claimed multiple times that he knows that the US has reverse engineered craft from recovered UFO parts, and has insisted a few times that the craft in particular he is referring to is triangular in nature. Could this be what he's alluding to? Completely possible. Time will tell, of course. And number 1, Hawaii re-entry. I try to save the best clip for last, and I sure hope this doesn't disappoint. If that last one from Guatemala didn't have you convinced that there's tech out there we can't explain, why don't you try this on for size? This recently captured footage came to us from a Redditor, One Gold Breadfruit. Thank you. Take a look at this bizarre experience they caught pulling into Maui, Hawaii. If you're watching this on your phone, crank the brightness just for a few seconds and see if that helps out a bit. It almost seems like what we're looking at is something huge being rendered invisible by some cloaking technology, maybe on a loan from the Predator. What's throwing me most about this clip is just the size of whatever is being caught on camera here. Most UAP or UFO videos, it's pretty difficult to figure out how large something is when you're looking at a blurry dot in the sky. But here, here, it's almost like we're face to face with what looks like a massive craft. Some commenters have suggested that what you're looking at right now is a satellite re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, citing a particular event in 2008 as proof, though the footage is dated from 2020, so not entirely sure. Some other commenters argued that it didn't look like something re-entering the atmosphere, as there was no visible trails of any kind on the craft as it entered. I can't say too much about that. I am not a rocket scientist even remotely. Just look at me. I'm not giving off rocket scientist vibes. I'm a YouTuber and I'm a UFO enthusiast. If you have some insight, I am definitely all ears, but until then, I'll probably just be watching these clips over and over again, pausing frame by frame in a dark basement like I'm Agent Mulder sitting alone trying to get to the bottom of this. I just want to believe, darn it.
Number 5. Red Eyeball Ship. In January of this year, a man in Spokane, Washington was in his living room when he happened to sight a strange alien craft that caused him to question his beliefs and his place in the universe. In his own words, "Our backyard camera recorded this strange object. We put a camera in our backyard because stuff has been coming up missing. But one morning I had the TV on in my living room as I was sitting on our couch. I happened to look up at the TV and saw this strange object. I went out on the back porch and I couldn't see that object at all. But when I went back in the house, it was still there. I went to get my brother to show him what I was seeing. He didn't know what it was, but he was seeing it too. Then it started to move out in the field, where I didn't see it anymore. Then it started to come back towards my backyard. Again, it looks round with a red eyeball in the middle, but I have no clue to this day what it is. I took a couple photos in infrared. If you look in the center of the red, you can see something. Looking at the photos, it is difficult to come up with another explanation for what this strange unidentified flying object could be. Number 4. An American UFO. Our next tale was posted this year, but details an experience from the year 1980. The witness shared his story of seeing a UFO that seemed to be affiliated with the US government, but he also posits a theory about why the government would allow this ship to be seen by the public. I had a sighting in broad daylight in 1980 at around 9 a.m. in early December. My mom and hundreds of other motorists witnessed it as well. We were driving to visit my father at his work in Beverly Hills and were waiting to hop on the freeway in Santa Monica when we saw your classic silver disc. It hovered completely still at about 150 feet or so for 10 solid minutes. Remember, we were crawling, slow as molasses traffic. We got a very good look at this thing. On the underside was stenciled US Air Force. It looked very official, and we assumed it had to be one of ours. Then, after hovering for 10 minutes, it shot off towards the southwest like a bullet. I've never seen anything move so fast in my life. It was shocking, but I have a theory as to what the craft was doing there and why we witnessed it. I don't know how familiar you are with Jimmy Carter on the issue of UFOs, but he is on record as having had a sighting of his own in 1973. Carter was no flake. He had a degree in nuclear physics and is a former naval officer, retired at the rank of lieutenant, which in the Navy is like the Army equivalent of a major. Rank promotions are much harder and time-consuming in the Navy. Anyhow, Carter tried like hell to get disclosure during his presidency. He knew he was being stonewalled. When you think about it, it's unacceptable that the nation's most powerful elected leader cannot declassify something that the public, the world, has a right to know about. But what I've come to believe is that Carter ordered a captured or back-engineered UFO with official Air Force insignia to fly over a populated area, where thousands were waiting in traffic to get on the freeway, so people would ask the questions he couldn't find the answers to. Number 3. Father and son UFO bonding. Next, we have a story from Nova Scotia, where a young man saw an alien craft and panicked. He thought that no one would believe him until his father told him about his own close encounter from years before. Here is his story. My living room at the time had a window above me behind the TV. So, I am watching TV. I don't remember what exactly. It was about 2:30 or 3 a.m. at this point. My father got up to use the washroom and went back to bed. I got up to get a drink and saw something out of the corner of my eye, outside the window and above the high school. I literally could walk outside my house, take 2 steps, and I was on school property. I see this light above the school. I figured it was a meteor shower or space junk. I grabbed the binoculars. I looked out the window to see if I could see it. I couldn't really get a good look. It was too blurry through the window. So I went outside to have a look. It was not very bright in my small town. I look out towards the school. I see something I can only describe as a ball metal, almost like a flowing liquid metal, but to my eyes seemed like it was taking the form of a sphere, condensing in on itself from time to time and rippling. As if the surface rippled like water, the light from it appeared that way. It was circular, bright, white, almost silvery. At times, it seemed that the light coming from it had faded, and I could see that it was a solid sphere, silver in appearance. I do not know how big it would be. A guess would be the size of a two-seater passenger plane. It darted from above the school to the hospital in a blink of an eye. The distance was about 1/4 of a kilometer, but on a somewhat linear path. I had my eyes glued to it, and it blinked out of existence. It is the only way I can describe it. I could no longer see it. I scanned around the sky with the binoculars, then found it was above a church about a full kilometer away. Same strange ball rippling like metal. I was outside for, I believe, 25 to 30 minutes. Based on my coming back in between 3:30 a.m. and 4 a.m. My brain could not comprehend what I was seeing. I literally thought I was dreaming or experiencing some kind of hallucination. I felt as if what I was seeing was straight out of a movie or sci-fi book. It was like it was darting around our entire town at random intervals, going from one part to another within the blink of an eye. The distance it traveled from the school to the hospital to the church is in total 1.4 kilometers. I snapped, and for some reason started crying. I ran to my dad and woke him up. "It's a satellite," is what he said. My father enjoyed watching stuff on UFOs and personally believed the US government covered something up about Roswell, but I never really said too much. He told me to go to sleep. I was terrified, for whatever reason. I was so scared after it. I did not sleep for months unless one of my parents was awake while I fell asleep. I really struggled with whatever I experienced that night for a very long time. It was a horrific experience for me and hard to even talk about. I had extreme anxiety and depression from it. I was only a teenager, just barely. I found myself being paranoid. I did not want to be alone at all. Anywhere, in the daytime, I would make sure I always knew where someone was. I was never alone. I was so afraid, I started saying prayers. I spent the next 5 years looking at everything I could that was related to UFOs. The sensation I had from it. I felt a oneness kind of, but also so completely overwhelmed with fear. It felt as if my skin was trying to escape my body. My spine burned, and the entire time I was filled with thoughts of, this is amazing, and I'm going to die. I need to get in the house. All the hair on my body was standing up. I was sweating. When I got in the house, my shirt was nearly stuck to me in sweat. My father thought I went outside and got attacked and ran away. I was crying and rambling about some craft in the sky and how it was going to get me. My father told me he never saw anyone so absolutely terrified before, that I was nervous and would look out the windows at night to make sure I was okay. I've never been so afraid in my life of anything. My body was telling me I was going to die. My father didn't like me waking him so I could sleep. My mother, well, was not in the picture. My father's reaction is based off of a sighting he had in the 70s that some people in the town saw. He was ridiculed by people for talking about the craft he saw so close to the ground it looked like it was going to land in the blink of an eye. It darted off and was gone. He said it was circular in shape, like the classic UFO, glowed bright yellow, and had a low hum to it. He doesn't really like talking about it. Number 2. Another father-son tale. Next, we have a story from a man who was not a believer in alien life until one night his young son pointed out something in the night sky to him. In his own words, "I was in my home in Almond, Michigan. That time of year, it gets quite dark quite early. It must have been around 8 p.m. My son, who at the time was 12, came running into the house, saying there was a UFO right outside our house. Let me add, at this point, I was not one who believed in UFOs. I went outside and my son pointed south and upwards and said, 'Look.' The funny thing was, at first I didn't see anything, but I did notice it was unusually dark. Then I noticed a very dim light. I suddenly realized that the reason it was so dark was that there was a huge craft right over our driveway. It was at tree level and was moving north at a very slow pace, approximately a slow walking speed. There was a very distinct humming, exactly like a large transformer humming. There was a very dull light in the middle, and as it traveled down our driveway, I made out a row of windows around the craft. The windows looked very large. I remember walking down the driveway with my son. The next thing I remember is standing out in the field north of my house, still looking at the UFO, when suddenly it went from approximately 90 or 100 feet straight up in the sky to where it was a pinpoint of light. It just looked like another star. This happened in under a second. We continued to watch it for quite a while when it took off in a northwesterly direction, like a meteor, and was gone in a second. There are a lot of things I can describe if you are interested, but this is the basic part. I don't feel like I was abducted, but honestly, I do not remember how I got from my driveway and then into the field. Number 1. Bigfoot, Alien Hunter. Our final story is perhaps the most insane sounding story I've ever read. It began when a group of friends went to stay in a cabin in Missoula, Montana. At first, everything seemed normal until they looked to the sky after dinner on their first night, as one of the witnesses reported. Right there, hovering above the meadow at almost the level of the hills off in the distance, it appeared to be a triangular shape / sphere shaped like an arrowhead. It had a flashing red light at each point and they flashed at the same time. Slowly, the craft started turning until it was pointing right in our direction. We all squealed with nervousness. We all convinced ourselves and each other that it was much too far away and that there was no way it could see us. Jason got up and turned the outside lights off. Then, the object turned off its lights. When Jason turned them back on, it did as well. They did this a few more times, with the craft always copying their actions. Then, with no warning, it just shot forward and then came to a dead stop over top of us, and when it stopped that quickly, it seemed that the momentum made the front end point downwards right at us. The group ran inside and hid, with one of them eventually working up the courage to look out the window, only to see yet another rare sight. Bigfoot. The witness kept quiet about this because, you know, one thing at a time, but that night heard bipedal footsteps on the roof of the cabin. The next morning, 2 of the friends went to the river to fish, and the others had coffee on the porch, but looked to the tree line and saw the drivers of the alien craft. I saw as clear as day what is commonly called a gray alien. Its big bulbous head was peeking out from behind a tree, and I saw its dark almond-shaped eyes and the tiny nose with 2 very small holes. I'm not sure if it felt me looking at it, but it slowly moved back behind the tree. At that point, the fishermen came running back, saying that they had crossed paths with Bigfoot again. 40 feet into the woods of mainly ponderosa pine, they saw the Bigfoot. It walked step by step with them, and then it looked over at them and realized they were watching it. That's when it started walking towards them. They started running, and they saw that it was walking as quickly as they ran. When they made it through the woods, they got to a clearing. They ran with everything they had. They said it was dark brown in color and maybe 7 feet tall. Its hair was bushy in spots. Most people go their entire lives without seeing aliens, Bigfoot, or UFOs, so the fact that this trip to the cabin resulted in a hat trick is pretty impressive. If this is true, why was Bigfoot so close to an alien craft? Is he perhaps an alien as well? Is he a Wookiee?
Number 5. David Grush. So, if you've been following the topic of UFO disclosure closely, and the odds are good that you are because you're watching this video, you probably know the name David Grush fairly well. Grush is a former intelligence officer with years of dedicated service and involvement in UFO research who's been blowing headlines open with some of his shocking revelations, which, if they're true, would change the fabric of our world. It would change everything as we know it. We'd look at these days right now as the golden days, I think. I lost my train of thought there. Whoops. We'd look at these days as like the days before Pandora's box opened. We're never gonna be able to close that seal again. Grush served on the UAP portfolio for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency as well as the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which is a bureau for investigating alien sightings. So Grush has the credibility. But what is he alleging? In a recent interview with News Nation, Grush drops the bomb saying that non-human intelligence has visited Earth and it's recognized and known by major governments, claiming that in 1933 a craft was recovered by Mussolini's forces in Italy and then intercepted by the US in 1944, meaning that the Vatican helped suppress the knowledge of this and the Vatican is aware of non-human intelligence out there. In this same interview, and if you're interested in this stuff, you really should just watch it instead of watching me talk about it, Grush alleges that the US has recovered quite a number of alien crafts over the years, with at least 12 or more sitting in US reserves right now being studied, reverse engineered. Occupied bodies have been recovered as well. Now, fascinatingly, Grush says he wouldn't exclusively call these entities alien, saying they can be extraterrestrial or interdimensional creatures. He doesn't provide too much of a description on what they could look like, and obviously there's no photos, sadly, just that they're out there. He goes on to state that the infamous Roswell incident in New Mexico was absolutely real, and that everything since then has all been a concentrated, prolonged disinformation campaign to get people away from the subject, even going so far as to say the US US participates in widespread mass disinformation, leaking true details alongside falsified reports to keep UFO discussion a fringe subject, preventing it from being taken seriously. And hey, if that's the case, US Army, if you want to throw me a couple bucks to spread some rumors and disinformation, my DMs are open. The full disclosure interview is absolutely fascinating stuff, and I highly recommend you go seek it out after this video. Number 4, an Air Force engineer. Now, Grush's forwardness is inspiring others to come forward with their own full disclosure. I mean, if they won't, we have to, right? An anonymous source claiming to be an aerospace engineer added an addendum to Grush's interview on Reddit, claiming that they could corroborate some of his points. Take a listen, and obviously take a huge grain of salt as you're listening to all of this, as it is just someone typing on a computer, but I thought it was fairly interesting. As a current aero engineer for the US Air Force, 26 years and going, I can help you decode at least some of this interview. First, I know that Grush has only limited ability to talk about the subject. He did get clearance to speak to a certain extent, but he must withhold quite a bit in order to avoid very serious law violations. So, expect him to be holding back some things he could say, and this also necessitates rephrasing on-the-fly language he would normally use. Second, the retrieval program he talks about is real and is the most highly classified program in the US. The program is called Zodiac, and this may or may not come out to the public soon. Take this in when viewing the man's speech. He is trying to talk to us about the most highly classified project in the world. People have died, lost careers, lost family to the secret. So to say this is stressful to talk about would be an understatement. Should I be talking about this right now? Should I be talking about this? Am I gonna get the channel shut down? Third, when he shook his head talking about the spacecraft and alien, because we don't really think this is what they are. But this term is in common use publicly and is as close as we can describe the phenomena to general public and be understood. These things, these UAP, are much more than spacecraft. They are trans-medium interdimensional craft to the best of our knowledge. And the alien aspect, this is just the easiest term we have because we don't really know for sure what they are, but this term is close. At present, we consider most of these beings to be advanced biological AI. Ooh. Lastly, I can tell you from my own experience while on duty, these are real. I can tell you this because I was present on 2 occasions. I wasn't read into this program, so I can only tell you I was there on 2 occasions, happenstance, and they're as real as the nose on your face. Well, as you can see on my face, my nose is pretty real, pretty here, all natural, no work done on that thing. So that means this guy's story is real too, and a fascinating story it is. Number 3, Stephen Greer's disclosure. Dr. Stephen Greer is a renowned ufologist and a former physician intent on waking the public up and achieving that full disclosure. Possibly inspired by the surge of whistleblowing in recent months, he held a press conference with several key witnesses and testimonies that he believed would provide adequate disclosure and get the truth out there. Now, the whole thing is available online, and assuming we take all of these things as fact and it's not a very well organized grift, the secrets revealed within are life-changing. Greer claims that many different civilizations of extraterrestrials have all visited Earth, okay? Not just one species or one civilization, but lots. Now, he reports that as of now, no non-human entities have displayed an outward hostility towards humans, which is nice. That's one less thing to worry about. Don't have to worry about the Covenant coming in anytime soon. Like Grush, Greer claims that the US has had access to non-human craft, and they've been studying the tech for breakthroughs in weapons, in cloaking, propulsion, energy technology. Now, this is the really fascinating part, is a claim that one reverse engineered extraterrestrial technology is pre-programmed life forms, a sort of synthetic artificial life which are mistaken for aliens, described as biosynthetic AI, which sounds very similar to what the aerospace engineer was talking about in the last point. So maybe they share a Google Drive and they're getting ideas from each other, or maybe they're onto something. Another huge bombshell is allegations that within the US government, there's a shadowy clandestine group that was established in the 50s that operates free from the government's wishes, and they conceal alien tech and hoard it from the rest of the world to further their own goals. They're apparently very good at targeting and downing extraterrestrial vehicles and possess the tech and manpower to threaten security. Now, these are bold claims, but in this day and age, it's going pretty difficult to ascertain what's a bold claim and what's the truth actually leaking through the cracks. I mean, everybody's talking about biosynthetic AI aliens. Maybe biosynthetic AI aliens are out there. Number 2, Corporal John Weingant. Now, if y'all remember to the last part of this video, not the previous thing I just talked about, but the last 5 parts I talked about it, Part 1. We spoke of the testimony given by the Marine Michael Herrera, who claims that he saw paramilitary forces that seemed to be American loading weapons and munitions into an octagonal, non-human looking craft while he was deployed in Indonesia in 2009. Now the story sounded outrageous, kind of like the plot of a video game, but also sounded extremely similar to an eyewitness account from another Marine years and years and years earlier in Peru. Now you take a listen to the statement by Lance Corporal John Weingant. Lance Corporal Weingant had been a Marine since 1994 and in 1997 was deployed to Peru. Alerted to a possible friendly ship that had crashed at 3 a.m., he and a few other Marines drove out to the crash site in Humvees to investigate. After hours of searching through the brush, they found a gash in the land where it seemed as if something super hot had cut through the land, claiming that it looked as if a laser had gone through with surgical precision. And at the peak of the gash was this huge craft, non-human in nature, aerodynamic but organic, looking bumpy, notched, and alive, and dripping an unknown fluid. Most shockingly, he claims that inside the craft felt like he could experience something communicating with him telepathically, saying that they meant no harm and were peaceful in nature and needed assistance. Now he claims shortly after this, helicopters and men in black military uniforms took him away and threatened him into silence, threatening his family and his livelihood if he didn't comply. Now, he sat on the story for years, only speaking out about it years after. It sounds very similar to the story presented by Herrera. Now do you think this is fact or fiction? The video interview seems very genuine and the story seems complicated and very detailed for a hoax. Hopefully we know the truth on this, or hey, maybe it's better not knowing. And number 1, footage from the Hudson River. And coming in at the number 1 spot today is going to be some shocking footage captured on an infrared security camera on the Hudson River on a marina. We've talked a lot about shadowy governments, secret retrieved alien crafts, decades spanning conspiracies, psyops, cover-ups, secret organizations, and I just thought we could all need a breather, you know? Something light, end the video something fluffy and fun, and it's about time I included one clip of a grainy, strange object darting across the sky that we can all argue about or speculate on wildly. It's the most fun part of UFO stuff. The clip is short and sweet and you get everything you need. We see a pretty clear view of a marina and then bam, right in front of your eyes. Seems like somebody hit the FTL drive, is taken off to a new galaxy, right? 12 parsecs away. Like what else could that be? Now I always try to play fair with the skepticism. Some commenters aren't convinced that this is proof of mass relay-based travel in starships, with some saying that it's as simple as a security camera bugging out, and if you'll pardon the pun, catching a bug flying close by at a particularly high speed. Leaves a trail because the longer shutter speed being used by the camera at night. The object appears so brightly because it's illuminated by the infrared LEDs in the camera, which are designed to illuminate objects close to the camera at night, which all sounds very reasonable, but at the same time, now I don't know. Maybe it's just because I've been talking about aliens. Maybe it's because I watched the video slowed down a few times, but it really seems like it's something just blasting off, you know? Blasting off like Team Rocket. The object appears out of nowhere for a few frames, shoots off into the dark, and then vanishes. It doesn't seem like a bug is what I'm trying to get across. But maybe that's just because I want to believe, you know? We're getting closer and closer to it every day. It's only a matter of time now before you log on to YouTube and you see Top 5 Scary uploading top 5 coolest aliens I've talked to personally, and the thumbnail's gonna be me shaking hands with one. Look for it in the next couple weeks. Number 5, Bonita Springs, Florida. Our first clip today is gonna be coming to us from the UFO subreddit, because really, where else? The UFO subreddit is doing more to get alien content out in the open than any world government is willing to, so if they're not gonna do it, we gotta let the guys online pick up the slack. This clip was posted to us from user Marcus1640, who had this to say. Well, let's roll the clip though first, I think. I was working in my garage, which is about 100 feet west of this camera location, doing the things you do to keep the wife happy. The sky's clear, and out the corner of my eyes, I see this bright ball getting bigger and bigger. It was really bright and then faded away fast. It wasn't a meteor, and I checked planes live, nothing was close. I'm in Florida, so this stuff is pretty common, but this was weird. And no noise. Now in the clip it can be a bit hard to see, so I'll guide you through this, definitely as well because it isn't black and white, which does take away some of it. But we see a bright light up in the sky that comes into frame, hovers around a little bit, it kind of seems like it's scoping out the situation, and then flies out of frame after, I guess, it decides there's nothing happening. Now OP said that the ball of light when he saw it come into frame was this shining, radiant orange, impressively bright in the night sky. Obviously, that doesn't translate super well, so we have to use our imagination just a little bit, you know? Close your eyes and imagine it's bright and orange. Wow, what a lovely shade you used. Now, some speculation in the comments section of Reddit had people wondering if possibly this could be something like space debris burning up on re-entry, or a satellite reflecting the sunlight down to Earth for but a second. Pretty difficult to tell from here, but that's the way it goes with the paranormal sometimes. Nothing can ever be so easy, and would we really want it to be? I think we should have to fight for it just a little bit. Fight to get the truth out there. Number 4, the Netherlands. Our next sighting is gonna come to us from the Netherlands. Seems even aliens can't resist hitting up Amsterdam. Let's roll the clip first to get your eyes on it, and then we're gonna take a quick listen to the description posted by its witness, who's remained anonymous. Just before 6 p.m. in front of the cinema in Scheveningen? There's no way I'm pronouncing that right. I noticed this object. While viewing this object, it almost did not move at all. In the entire 20 minutes I was there, the object floated very slowly once to the left and right, and then twice up and down. The shape remained exactly the same throughout. The size remained the same regardless of whether or not this object moved up, down, left, or to the right, and there were no lights to be seen on it. Everything was completely black, and it looked like there was a smudge in the sky. In terms of height, this is unfortunately impossible for me to estimate. But there were several people who, like me, took photos and videos. The object was visible for about 20 minutes. Now, the video we've included was pretty short. In fact, those 10 seconds were all that was in that video anyway. But when that video was posted to Reddit, it was corroborated by a few other sources who had all seen the same thing and posted similar videos. Meaning, this isn't some CGI trick, or if it is, a lot of people are in on this conspiracy. So what do we think this could possibly be? The usual suspect of it being a strange blimp or a balloon is always a possibility, and I've seen enough of these videos now that I'm always instantly like, this is probably just a balloon, isn't it? But it's still very, very weird. So let me know down below what you think. I love hearing from you guys about what you think on all this. Number 3, Phoenix, Arizona. This next clip was first posted to TikTok, but since being posted there has been making the rounds across the web since it's got UAP enthusiasts like yours truly peering their eyes open and gluing them to the screen. Let's take a look and you all tell me what you think, okay? Now, whatever is going on in there is definitely odd. That much I can say with absolute certainty. There's something up there in the clouds that's floating above almost menacingly, maybe that's just me, and it's flashing a light brightly, and I swear it almost looks like it's turning invisible over and over again. The thing seems to be slowly moving across the sky in a way that makes it look like it's scanning the surroundings. Naturally, commenters went a bit wild with this clip, speculating like I am now. Some suggested that this could be something like hyper advanced military technology being tested out in the field, which would definitely be exciting, and honestly, more probable than not, I feel like there's a lot the government don't tell you about what they're working on. The CIA themselves even said that they think most alien sightings in the 50s and 60s were just reports of the U-2 spy craft. Others suggested that this could be something as dull as a civilian drone being flown around in the sky with a lighting rig attached for no other purpose than to drum up attention and get some TikTok views. But do you really think someone would do that? Someone would go on the internet and just lie for attention? I don't know. Meanwhile, more than a few people on the original TikTok were very convinced that this was a proper UAP alien sighting and could have been an alien visitor caught on tape. Comment section, I'm gonna toss this one over to you as always. Me, personally, I'm a little inclined to believe this might be a boring one. This could just be a drone, just because I'm not so sure that our alien visitors would give themselves away so easily by attaching lights to their crafts and letting themselves get identified so easily, but maybe that's what they want us to think. So I'm curious what you all think it could be. Number 2, Scotland. This next clip is gonna be coming to us from Scotland. I like when we have UFOs all across the globe, you know? It makes it seem like we're all in this together. It was originally posted on the UFO subreddit as well. I'll roll an excerpt of the clip and then I'll walk you through the context that the user provided additionally with it. Let's roll it. Okay, pretty Pretty cool stuff, right? So the user posted, there are two objects in the sky moving at a steady speed. They were not massive, I reckon about the size of a Jeep, maybe twice that size at most. Twice the size of a Jeep is pretty big, I think. Definitely smaller than a plane, but a lot bigger than drones. They had no lights, no wings, no windows, and no propellers. They also made no noise. These objects looked much bigger in real life than they did in the video. On film, they appear to be black, but in real life, I would say they had a color similar to a cloud. Not quite white, but not quite gray either. They looked to be spheroid or tic-tac shaped, and they looked solid and metallic. They seemed like they had smoke coming out of them sometimes, but it was hard to know if that was just them moving through the clouds, causing an effect that looked like smoke. In terms of height, they were flying about twice the height of a typical city building, definitely lower than a plane would have. Also, may I just say, as someone who watches a lot of UFO clips, to be able to find one that is clear as day, filmed on a high quality camera, recorded for a good amount of time, and also had a lot of context provided, put this thing in a museum. That is 1 in a billion. I don't even care if these things aren't aliens. Those three qualities are more exciting than aliens to me. Now, when this clip was posted to Reddit, there were a few people speculating that these could be balloons, despite the original poster pointing out that they thought the things were emanating smoke, so it's, no pun intended, a bit up in the air what these things might be. We get reports of cuboid or tic-tac like UFOs a lot in this video series, which does make me think there's something suspicious going on if so many people report on similar objects like that, but we still don't have any answers. I hope we get there someday. I know the truth is out there. Number 1, Hollywood. Our final entry for this video is going to come to us from Hollywood. Even aliens like the tourist hotspots. Let's roll the clip and I'll add the commentary and speculation afterwards, because this one's a good one. There's a reason I saved it for the last. Now, the original poster and uploader stated, "We noticed this huge object in the sky just sitting there by the Hard Rock Casino in Hollywood, Florida." Whoa, 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 stop the track, stop the video. Are there 2 Hollywoods? I'm a Canadian, so I don't know these things. Is Florida in LA? You guys have to fix that for me. Okay, moving back. Anyway, the object blurred itself out when we started recording it. It was huge. It didn't do much, but it just sort of sat there and blurred itself out. I have tried to Google to find out what it was, but I'm coming up with nothing. It was my husband, my 2 kids, and I who witnessed this together. Now, I gotta admit, this is one of the most compelling bits of UFO evidence I have seen in a minute. Not to throw the other 4 clips under the bus, they're all very lovely in their own way, and I hold them all in my heart dearly, but this one, oh baby, this is the golden ticket. I'm sure there might be a reasonable explanation for it, but on first glance, this thing looks like the definitive flying saucer. Like if you close your eyes and imagine a flying saucer, you start imagining this. It even looks like if you're watching this thing with eagle eyes that the saucer at one point cloaks, and the original poster mentions that it was blurring itself out when they started recording. Very interesting to me. That would explain a lot over the years if aliens have been specifically constructing their crafts to blur them out from being recorded by cell phones. I mean, imagine aliens keep coming to Earth just for like vacation, and they're getting so annoyed that they're trying to just have some fun, be tourists, and people cannot stop taking photos of them, so they're blurring out their crafts. So what do we think, my ghouls and goblins? Is this recording simply too good to be true? Is this movie magic and CGI up there? You do have to wonder why if this footage didn't set the internet ablaze, because that looks about as flying saucery as anything could possibly get. Of course, maybe the men in black and the higher ups are trying to scrub this clip from the internet and don't want you to see, and maybe I just got the whole channel in trouble. Number 5, Las Vegas body cam. My dear ghouls, things are heating up in the sky lately, and the whole world is coming down bad with alien fever. If you're a UFO enthusiast, the odds are very good you've heard a thing or two about the recent sighting in Las Vegas. That's kind of building up to be a modern day Roswell with all the conspiracy and cover-up allegations. NASA's planetary defense officer, which, side note, I did not know was a real job, told Motherboard, a branch of Vice News, that a green fireball observed last month was not a UFO, but rather a small meteor less than a meter in size that landed smack dab in somebody's backyard. Now, the Las Vegas police officers who responded to the call say they didn't find any aliens in a manhunt, or alien hunt I suppose is probably more accurate, but they do hope to find them in the future, citing the city's close proximity to Area 51 as a source of speculation. Now the problem is that footage went wildly viral over the internet when a police officer's body cam was uploaded. We've got a little bit of this footage for you here today. It's kind of hard to make anything out of it, like most blurry alien footage, but it's fun to let our speculations run wild. And this TikToker seems adamant that you can see an alien over one of the cop's shoulders. Personally, I think it does look a bit just like a light or like a headlight or something, but you let me know what you feel like you see. The case has been captivating, with the callers, the 911 callers, claiming that they saw tall, non-human entities in their backyard with big glowing eyes looking at them. So what do you think, my fair and trusted viewers? Do you think these aliens got lost on the way to Area 51 to meet their friends and crash landed in somebody's backyard? Or was it just a meteor? Or did the aliens come from the meteor and the meteor itself was the UFO? Truly, who is to say? Who is to know? Hopefully we find out soon enough, and when we do, you better believe that I'll be the first to tell you. And if you're looking for way more videos about all things UFO and alien, oh my good gosh, do we have a lot of that on the channel for you to enjoy. Everything from conspiracies, cover-ups to UFO sightings, we've got it. If you're sick of hearing about little green men, we've got all sorts of things on crime, conspiracy, everything scary. It's on Top 5. So hit subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell as well, and don't miss a single thing. But you get to do that at the end of this video for me, okay? Because I got 4 more UFO sightings coming up for you right now. Number 4, the Pentagon. We are at a truly exciting time to be an enthusiast of UFOs and aliens. It feels more so than any other point in human history that the discussion around aliens and UFOs is leaving the fringe sciences and starting to become accepted, commonplace by respectable employed people, not just folks wearing tinfoil. Recently, the Pentagon released a video of a reported UFO zipping around near an Air Force drone and revealed footage to, quote the Pentagon, everyone thought was truly anomalous, which is government speak for we don't know what the fuck this is. At the time, the object appeared to be moving with something propelling it forward, but a later determination would show that it didn't, which baffled and puzzled the analysts, as usually something propels you forward in the air. Now, this hearing was very interesting for a few reasons, but foremost, it allowed us a little bit of insight into how government agencies go about treating UFO sightings. We learned they categorize them first by what they most likely are, starting with the obvious things like planes or balloons, which account for like 99% of all UFO sightings. And then when it's something they truly cannot immediately identify, they prioritize where was it found? How is the object maneuvering? Does it seem like it's being driven? Control. Does it seem as if it has a payload? Does it have something attached to it? The hearing started by saying that the Pentagon currently doesn't believe that they have any definitive proof of extraterrestrial life on Earth, but concluded by saying that we'll be getting another disclosure document coming soon, possibly even as early as July. So we have huge, exciting things on the horizon coming up in July, and I'm not just talking about the Barbie movie. Number 3, Jorge Ortega. Is it just me, or are things getting crazier? Maybe I'm watching more UFO footage as part of my job, but it seems like every day we see more UFO sightings, like they're doubling, tripling over what they used to be. Yeah, admittedly, everybody carries a camera in their back pocket now, but it does seem like more people are checking out the planet. Ever since that streak in February, I feel like it's been an arms race for the coolest UFO footage. While pilot Jorge Ortega captures what some are describing as the best UFO footage ever, but I'll let you be the judge of that. He uploaded the video online, where it was found by an account called The Hood's Finest, where the clip went wildly viral on Instagram. Thank you, The Hood's Finest, one of the most trusted sources of journalism in these dark times. Let's take a look. It's definitely mysterious. That much I can say with complete confidence. It's really hard to tell what that was, but the way it speeds forward without any visible exhaust does make it seem highly suspicious. You can't make any details on that craft at all. Now, Ortega claims this was the most frightening experience of his life, and it's really not hard to see why. A circular, spherical, strange object flew directly in front of his plane, then whizzed by his window. Whizzed, like, you know what I meant. I shouldn't have used that word. Ortega and his co-pilot were flying towards Santa Fe when they first noticed the strange object coming towards them. The pilots believed that whatever they saw was non-human in nature, and definitely not a balloon or another aircraft. Ortega claims that the aircraft was traveling at an incredible speed of 300 kilometers an hour. I don't know how many miles an hour that is for Americans. You guys are gonna have to calculate that on your own. With the temperature at the time of the flight falling close to 5 degrees Celsius. With all that being said, it seems less likely that it's a bird or a balloon, and possibly something far more mysterious. As always, I love to hear your guys' opinion on stuff like this, so feel free to debate away in the comments if you think you've got an idea or an angle on this that I'm not seeing. We need as many eyes on this as possible. Of course, you can also just, I don't know, tell me something nice about your day. Tell me something that made you smile today. I love hearing about that too. Number 2, Chad Underwood. I think by now, if you're subscribed to the channel, and I hope you are, you've heard a thing or two about the Tic Tac UFOs that the Navy released videos of. In a lot of ways, these videos were kind of one of the first big steps for this recent surge of UFO, UAP stuff being taken kind of seriously, with these baffling videos leaked by the Navy that no one could explain. Although they were taken years and years ago, back in the halcyon days of 2004, the pilot who took the video has rarely spoken out about his experiences at all, for the understandable fear that he'd be lumped in with, quote, the little green men crazies that are out there. Well, I'm one of them, Chad Underwood, and I'm ready to believe you. Oh, Chad Underwood, that's the guy who filmed it. I don't know if I said that before. The story of the Tic Tac UFO began on November 10th, 2004, when radio operator Kevin Day reported seeing something odd and slow flying around the San Diego coast. It was moving approximately 140 miles an hour at a height of nearly 30,000 feet, so definitely not like any bird that I've ever heard of, and probably unlikely to be balloons. Commander David Fravor of the Black Aces identified the 40-foot-long white oblong-esque object hovering and exhibiting no exhaust propulsion, but seemingly darting itself forward at impossible velocities. It was Chad Underwood's footage that got shared and went viral. Via infrared camera pods mounted on the plane, we get sightings of these mysterious Tic Tacs in action. And I wish I had something different to tell you for the end of this point, something a bit more dramatic and exciting, but nearly a decade later, and we are still absolutely no closer to understanding just what happened here, what's happening in these videos, what these crafts are, but maybe we'll get there soon. Like I said, there's supposed to be a document coming up in July that's going to reveal all sorts of new research and information the Pentagon's been working on, and maybe that will be the big one, or maybe it'll just also be nothing like it usually turns out to be. But who knows? And number 1, California Army Base. We all wonder if military bases are hiding advanced technology, right? Like all of us do that, it's not just me. Like what kind of secrets could be buried underneath Area 51? Wouldn't you want to know? It definitely seems like visitors from other worlds are just a bit curious too, as there was a mass sighting of possible UFOs out in the California desert, right above a military base, one Camp Wilson. Was it a sign of visitors scouting out the area, or technology from within being reverse engineered by the American government? Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp are a pair of ufologists, and they revealed the footage on their podcast, saying that the video and photos were shot all the way back in April 2021, but didn't appear until now, where a series of mysterious lights manifested above the base for 9 minutes, prompting the Marines to launch a significant air and ground response. You know, just in case this turned out to be like an Independence Day kind of sitch. The Marines fired flares at the UFO, and the craft disappeared just before the flares could illuminate what they were. Classic, that's just like every single UFO story, you know, right before the good part. The hosts of the podcast go on to say that there was no media coverage whatsoever of the incident. I mean, I don't really remember anybody talking about this in April 2021, but I also don't remember April 2021, so I'm not a trusted source. But since then, nothing really has come out about it. They got the tip from someone at the base, from a person who was pretty high up, they quote. The tip was that there was more to this story that was being led on. Now, some viewers, some astute alien fans, have pointed out a noticeable similarity between this incident and the Phoenix Light event in 1997, where a series of strange lights hovered over the city of Phoenix, witnessed by multiple people in the city, but unknown to everyone and to this day, unsolved. So what happened here? Just one more mystery we'll never get an answer to? I'm not sure, but I'll never stop looking. The truth is out there, and I want to believe. Number 5, falling from the sky. Coming up first today is going to be this wild footage that was posted to TikTok quite recently. It might have flown under the radar, but now it's blowing up. And if you're into the supernatural and the unexplained, maybe you've seen it on your front page already in between videos of cats falling over. It was posted by user PMESASSO, and it showcases a truly bizarre encounter, and possibly a close encounter of the first kind. In this video, we can see something falling from the sky. Now, it's difficult to make out entirely what it is, but it looks more technological than not. It's not a bird. Looks a bit like it's a falling craft or a drone of some kind that's been shot down. Do you remember that week or two in February where every day a mysterious unknown craft would get shot down and then the government would refuse to explain or comment on what would happen? Remember how that happened and now we've all just moved on from it? I'm still thinking about it. Anyway, after that craft seemingly descends to the ground below, we see in the sky that a bunch of military fighter jets seem to be in hot pursuit of it, which definitely makes me pretty suspicious if there's fighter jets not even a minute behind a strange, unidentified craft. Now, there are some doubters in the comments who aren't as convinced. Some say the crafts are therefore an air show and the thing falling from the sky part of it as well. Of course, did they consider maybe the aliens were the one putting on an air show and the government didn't want to be upstaged and that's why they sent a craft over? If I know anything about the US military, it's that they don't like being second best at anything. And if you want to watch a place that's the #1 best at something, it's top 5 scary, and it's scary videos we've got. If you can think it up, we've got a video or two on it. I mean it. Megalodons, ghosts, ghouls, goblins, aliens, conspiracy theories, horror movies, basically anything freaky under the sun or above it, we got 2 or 3 videos on. So hit subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell so you don't miss a single thing, but if you'd be so kind, do that at the end of this video, because I got 4 more mysterious orbs and UFOs coming up for you right now. Number 4, Arizona's mysterious orb. Coming up next today on our list of strange sightings in the sky is this mysterious footage of an orb-like sphere bouncing around through the clouds. This clip was uploaded and posted to the UFO subreddit a few days ago, where it blew up almost immediately. Posted by user Amphion, and shout out UFO subreddit, making my job so much easier every day. The clip is a snippet from a local news station in Arizona reporting on a series of wildfires in San Bernardino, California. When the camera catches something a little hotter, as a pun, if you see what I did there, you can see a strange little orb floating around high above the forests. Now, it's very difficult to tell from here, but it looks to be moving at an incredibly fast speed, with seemingly no method of propulsion or exhaust trails to be found. It can even be going through the smoke at one point during the video, which would be catastrophic for most aerial crafts, as this area would be far, far too hot to approach via helicopter. Now, a user in the comments added a little bit of additional insight too. It looks very far out from where anyone could be piloting a drone. Looks to be a few miles out in the brush. Any civilian would be heavily discouraged, if not outright prohibited, from flying a drone near a wildfire area, with a possible crash with a helicopter being disastrous. So it has to be something that wasn't supposed to be in that airspace, or maybe doesn't even know where it is. So it's hard to tell what's going on with this one. I'm not sure what any skeptical answers or rational answers could be beyond the usual catch-all of strange drone or weather balloon. The object doesn't move too erratically or non-humanly, so it doesn't seem like it itself is making the decisions. I'm really not sure what this could be, my friends, which means you know what time it is. You let me know down below what you think it might be. Or just tell me something nice about your day, you know, I don't know, something that made you smile today. Number 3, something from the sky. Coming up next today at our number 3 spot is going to be this short, sweet, mysterious clip posted to us on the most reputable source of information on the internet, TikTok, by a user going by the name of Brian Daniel. Gosh, people have the weirdest names on the internet these days. Brian Daniel, what does that even mean? In this short clip, Daniel claims that near his home, something fell from the sky onto the ground below, glowing a searing bright blue, ethereally brighter than anything he'd seen before. Commenters said they'd seen the same thing in Florida, where the uploader lived. News reported that it was a meteor, but Daniel claims that it goes much deeper than that. He claims that the next day he tracked the crash site of the meteor and discovered what seemed to be a government operation cleaning the possible crash site, filming some feds standing around with their thumbs in their pockets on the beach. From there, Daniel claims that a mysterious man in a suit was on his front lawn filming his house, and him when he got home, and he didn't look like he was from the housing authority. Eerie. For what purpose? We don't know. Now, as fantastical as this video is, I'm always more than a little weary to believe something from TikTok, just because the app is very, very easy for anyone to edit content with, and this video is literally 3 disconnected shots clipped together. I know I'm a man on the internet telling you to believe things, but I think you should always be incredibly rational and skeptical and take everything with a grain of salt, and there's nothing to suggest that these 3 things were even taken by the same camera. Now, the meteor in Florida is real. That happened on April 13th, 2021, so jot that down. That did happen. But the thing that's really holding me back about this clip, and the reason I find it more skeptical than I believe it, is because the mysterious agent at the end of the video is wearing a suit that doesn't quite fit him. I thought they were the men in black, not the men in the dress for less at Ross's summer collection. Bet you didn't know I could go there. Number 2, what's on the moon? And coming in next today is going to be this incredibly weird clip posted to TikTok recently by a user going by the name of Larry Lou. Now, this is one of the stranger supernatural UFO clips I've seen in a few minutes. You'll see why in a few seconds. You'll definitely want to see this. In this strange clip, we can see something filming something bizarre that seems to be orbiting the moon. We can see some unknown objects flying around our moon, getting a little too close for comfort. That's our moon. Is that our own technology? Are these man-made satellites, or are these scouts, drones, or something else not of this world? Now, before we really put our tinfoil hats on and get wild with the speculating, we need to talk about the zoom in and the quality on this camera. I am inclined to believe that this guy works for NASA because he seems to have the James Webb telescope in his back pocket. I have watched innumerable, countless UFO clips for work, and I have literally never seen a clip this high quality. I was salivating watching this. I can't even talk about the alien stuff because I'm too busy focusing on the pixels in this thing. You can make out the footprints on the surface of the moon. You can see Neil Armstrong's size 13 on the dust. You're telling me this guy shot this on his phone? Why is this man not filming every single supernatural occurrence on this planet? If we set this guy up in the woods, we would have Bigfoot, Mothman, the Loch Ness, all that proven, disproven within an afternoon. I need to take 5. I need a drink. Okay, I'm good. Back to the original video. Most people in the comments were like me, solely focusing on the incredible lens on this user's iPhone. A few people suggested that that could be the American flag from the surface of the moon. I find that a bit unlikely, but I don't know enough about moons to disprove that. So what could it be? Let me know down below in the comments, or hey, feel free to just continue to comment on how impressive the camera zoom is. What is he working with there? What am I working with? I don't know. Number 1, crop circles. I didn't need to say it like that. Coming up last on our list of UFO sightings we just can't wrap our noggins around is this footage that was taken in 1989. Now, I know the title says 2023, but if you really squint, 1989, 2023, I don't know, they look exactly the same to me. It might be a vintage, but that just means the high strangeness has been aged to perfection. Don't dismiss it till you get your eyes on it. It looks like an excerpt of a documentary about aliens and UFOs of some kind, sort of like what you're watching now, but bet the guy hosting this isn't even half as charming. In the video, clear as day, we can see 2 strange, small, metallic spheres racing around a farmstead, glowing bright against the shroud of the night sky. They seem diligently at work, creating an intricate pattern below in the fields. Some sort of circle in the crop, an almost crop circle, if you will. I feel like crop circles kind of fell out of vogue in alien culture, which is a shame. I think they're very cool and fun. They always make me think of the underrated M. Night picture, Signs. I know some people hate that movie, but I thought otherwise. Anyway, I guess our parents were much more frightened by flattened designs and bits of grain and cereal, and we just don't feel the same way. But I, for one, want to bring it back. I want to bring crop circle culture back. Now, this clip is pretty remarkable. Some say it almost looks too good, and there's been a raging debate in the UFO and alien community as to whether or not this was a real clip or a very well engineered hoax for darn near 30 years now. Detractors argue that it's CGI, while believers state that the CGI would be too advanced for the time. I mean, most CGI around this era looked like Reboot, you know? Not to besmirch Reboot, but come on. Well, we probably won't find the answer today to whether or not it's a hoax or not, because only you can truly decide that, okay? The truth is out there for you. Just like only you can decide if M. Night Shyamalan is a misunderstood auteur or a total hack. We're just not going to talk about the Avatar movie.
Number 5. The boys' school sighting. Our first story comes to us from a teacher at a boys' school in India who took some of his young students stargazing one fateful night when they saw something unexpected flying through the sky. As he put it, "My name is Kanan. I'm a teacher at a boys' school in the village of Mayapura, West Bengal. Last week, I saw something that was what you would call a UFO. It was about 8 p.m. I was sitting outside under the stars with some of the boys. I looked up and saw this very bright blue light overhead. It started from there and it was moving very fast. Then, when it came directly overhead, it seemed to slow down and then stop. It had a tail at the back that started small and became bigger, and very clearly there was a solid object in front of that. It was not at all like a star or a satellite, and it was not very high. I was already staring at it when one boy said, 'What is that, Pradhu?' And then the other boy said, 'What is that? What is that?' We all got up and were looking at it. There were 6 of us. 5 boys and me. My wife was in the kitchen cooking something, and she came out too because we were all shouting. So it was at maybe 1.5 palm trees height from the roof of our hut, which is not very high. It was less than 5 stories above us. We saw it very clearly. Most of them were concentrating on the light. I looked in the front and saw that it was a clear object. It was not a star and it was not far away. It was right there. And it was also, like, moving around itself, but very slowly. Then it moved slowly away towards the river, where it suddenly picked up speed and disappeared. It was like somebody who slows down to look at something. It was very, very interesting, and the boys kept asking about it. Boys ask all sorts of questions. It was an abnormal thing, and we were completely helpless just looking at it. Did this teacher and his students really witness an alien craft? Or is there some other less interstellar explanation for this strange experience? What do you think? Number 4. The Factory Observer. Next up, we have a tale from Brazil, where workers at a water treatment station witnessed a UFO of a truly massive scale. This is their story. The other night, I, Roberto Rabello, saw a huge UFO over the city of Cubateo, São Paulo. When I arrived at my job at the ETA water treatment station, there were 3 other fellows watching the phenomenon. It was 12:58 a.m., dawn, and I looked to the north and there was a UFO at low altitude. One of the technicians said that it must be a short circuit in a near energy tower. Then we ascended the tower and realized that the thing we were seeing was not ordinary. The UFO was higher than the energy tower. It had a red light on top and 3 other red lights below, in a triangular shape. The lights did not blink. Seconds later, between the red lights, a lot of flashes. Hundreds of white flashes. Then, all disappeared suddenly. I estimated that the UFO was bigger than a soccer field. Then, suddenly, once again the UFO appeared, just like the first time. But this time, when the flashing lights had turned off, from the UFO, another object, like a yellow ball, came out, which flew in the direction of the COSIPA, a food factory. But the big UFO itself was no longer visible. Again, suddenly for the 3rd time, the UFO appeared, and this time we were able to see a shadow behind it, something triangular. Finally, the UFO moved away in the east direction, passing over the factory. The sighting lasted 20 minutes and was seen by 4 of us technicians. Why are UFOs hovering over our water treatment plants and food factories? Is this part of their studies on our species, or are they seeking out our weak points in preparation for a sinister invasion plot? Let us hope we never have to find out. Number 3. UFO Stalker. Our next story is from Germany and tells the tale of a man and a woman who were out for a drive when they looked to the sky and saw a strange craft that seemed to take strange interest in them. As the husband told it, it was dark and cloudy, no moon, no stars. When we were driving by car through the village named Fredelschla, when my wife glanced at the sky out of the side window, she saw something dark suddenly covering the sky over our car. I drove the car and watched the road, so I saw nothing at this time. 1 minute later, a big rotating object flew down the hill over the meadow and crossed the road just over our car. We only saw the lights, which were in 2 concentric circles, about 10 in the outer, 7 in the inner. The diameter was about 50 meters. There were no colored lights. All lights were white and as bright as the headlights of a car. The rotation speed was about 1.5 rotations per second, so it wasn't easy to watch a single light. The diameter of one light was about half a meter. The object flew at a height of 10 to 20 meters over the fields to a wood, turned by changing its inclination just like an airplane or helicopter has to in order to do a flying curve. It quickly returned back to the road to stop beside our car and fly at the same speed, 100 kilometers per hour. It lifted up, changing its inclination to me so I could see its amazing size. 2 seconds later, it flew over the car to the other side and turned with the same movement to fly over the car again. This repeated 5 or 6 times on our way. Okay, this wasn't all, but should be enough. There was no sound or noise, except the motor of the car. There was no smell. The radio was turned off. The maximum speed of the object was about 400 to 500 kilometers an hour. The observed acceleration 2 to 3 G. I know my speed, 100 kilometers an hour, know the points where the object crossed the road and the distance between these points, and I calculated the rest. It's impossible that this was a projection on the cloudy sky. When I looked out the side window, I couldn't see the sky, only the hill. Why do alien craft seem to take such a consistent interest in common drivers? No different from any others on the road. What are they hoping to learn about our species? And how close are they to figuring it out? Number 2, the Chinese air chase. Our next story comes from a Chinese air base commander whose subordinates had an aerial encounter with a UFO that evaded and toyed with them until the jet pilots got frustrated and aggressive with the extraterrestrial craft. In the words of the colonel himself, "I am Colonel Lee, commander of the air base in Changzhou, where the military flight training academy is located. One day, 4 radar stations reported the presence of an unidentified hovering over the academy. After ascertaining that the intruder was not a military or civilian flight, I ordered 6 jet fighters to take off and intercept the UFO. At least 140 people on the ground saw the object. To observers at the base, the UFO first appeared to be a small pointed star, and then grew larger and larger, perhaps as it descended to a lower altitude. Witnesses described an object with a mushroom-shaped dome on top and a flat bottom, covered with bright, constantly rotating lights. The crew of the interceptors consisted of a pilot and a radar officer. The 2 officers reported that the object clearly resembled descriptions they had seen in foreign science fiction films. When they got within 4,000 meters of the UFO over King County, it abruptly shot upwards, easily evading subsequent attempts to get closer. The flight crew reported that it appeared to be toying with the plane by repeatedly outdistancing it and then reappearing right over it. The pilot requested permission to fire on the UFO with the plane's automatic 20mm cannon. I denied this permission to shoot and told him to continue to pursue and observe the object. The pilot broke off pursuit at an altitude of 12,000 meters when the plane began running low on fuel. The UFO then apparently disappeared before I could order additional planes to be sent to the area. Why was this alien craft toying with the Chinese military? Was it simply a cosmic prank, or an assessment of the country's combat capabilities in preparation for a potential invasion? Let us hope it doesn't come to that. Number 1, the Polish ambulance chaser. Next on our list is a story from a Polish doctor who was in an ambulance aiding a pregnant woman on her way to the hospital when the ambulance had a close encounter that came a little too close for comfort. As the doctor related the story in his statement, "I am Dr. B. Plasek. In February, a woman named Mrs. Pluta, who was pregnant, began to experience labor pains, and the ambulance was called. She and I, plus the driver and stretcher bearer, were traveling along deserted country roads when we encountered, quite suddenly at 3:15 a.m., a huge crimson globe that came out of the sky and paced the ambulance for about 45 minutes. As we were a team of professional medical workers, our first concern was for the safety of the mother and baby, and we considered the UFO a distracting threat. For this reason, we did not get very emotional at the time. However, when we came to a level crossing, the 2 attendants in their hut were simply shaking with fear at the sight. We had to halt because the road was blocked by the huge crimson ball. To be more specific, this is what I believe we saw. At first, all of us in the ambulance saw the globe as a big red ball in the sky, some distance away. It looked larger than the full moon and was dark crimson in color. It immediately descended to the treetop height and hovered about 500 meters from the ambulance. 1 second, it hung in the sky at about cloud level. The next, it was seen hovering between 2 trees on either side of the road in the middle distance. All of us sensed the globe's ominous approach as it cruised towards us at a very low height, following the road. I was always aware that it was never exactly in the sky, but probably not very high above the ground at any time. As our ambulance approached the level crossing, so did the globe, and we each stopped there. The globe was less than a meter above the surface of the road. I got out to speak to the crossing attendants. I said, "Can you see what I see?" They said, "We've been observing it for some time." I went to the ambulance and told the others they cannot help us at all. They're trembling with fear. At that point, Mrs. Pluta's labor contractions became more frequent, and we felt it was urgent to get to the hospital immediately. Since our path was blocked, I decided to call the police. I reported that there was an obstacle in the way and asked them to come immediately. What kind of obstacle, they asked. A UFO, I replied. It was now 4:10 a.m. and all we could do was stay there and stare at the UFO. We had plenty of time to observe it in detail. Its surface displayed curved bands and stripes with a multitude of black lines traversing up and down in irregular patterns. These clear-cut markings reminded me of veins inside the human body. The ambulance driver said they looked to him like a huge net. As we watched, parts of the surface changed color. There appeared to be orange-yellow patches on the deep crimson background. Then, the globe dropped to only about 10 centimeters above the road, constantly changing colors, pulsating, but always with dull, muted tones. Suddenly, it gave off a strong white light that was so bright it reflected on the surface of the road. Out of sheer exasperation, our driver flashed his headlights at it twice. Immediately, inexplicably, it simply vanished. It was 4:15 a.m. At 6:10 a.m., Mrs. Pluta gave birth to a daughter in the hospital. A careful examination of the whole area in daylight revealed nothing. Why was this strange glowing orb showing such an interest in the ambulance? Was it simply the bright flashing lights on the ambulance roof that caught its attention? Or were they aware of the pregnant woman inside and wanted to learn more about how humans are born? We will never know for sure.